Shalom, Chavarim, dear friends. This is Devorah Kalik from Bless Israel Network, coming to you once again from Jerusalem. We've been doing a series on the holiday of Hanukkah, and though it's a minor feast, or minor holiday, it has major prophetic implications for the disciples of Yeshua, Jesus, and really for everyone. And I just want to thank you for being with us for this series, and today will be our last part, and we're going to finish up the explanation of how Hanukkah actually came into being by talking about the Maccabees. So we'll start with this. Antiochus IV, who we spoke about in our last part, in part 4, who was the evil Seleucid Greek king, had made reading the Torah, celebrating the Shabbat, the Sabbath, circumcision, keeping a kosher diet, all of it was illegal. So basically, we could say everything Jewish was illegal. Really, everything Messianic Jewish was illegal, because we who practice Messianic Judaism keep these things today. So what Antiochus did is he sent officials into various towns to make sure that they were not practicing their faith, forcing them to prove that they were assimilating into Hellenism. In the small town of Modi'in, which is about 17 miles northwest of Jerusalem, lived an old Levitical priest named Matityahu, or some people say Mattathias or Matthias, he was ordered to slay a pig on the altar in Jerusalem. Rather than obey, Matityahu killed him. And he had 5 sons, and his eldest son, Judah, became the leader of the rebellion of the Maccabees. Judah was eventually given the title the Hammer, which is what Maccabee means, and it was because of the effectiveness of his attacks against the Seleucid king and his army. Well, after 2 decades of fighting, so 20 years, they were ultimately successful, resulting in the expulsion of the Seleucid dynasty from Judea. There was a decisive battle in around 164 BCE when Jerusalem was recaptured and returned to Jewish control. This led to the subsequent cleansing and rededication of the temple. Well, there's a story recorded in the Talmud that there was very little oil left that hadn't been desecrated by the Seleucid Greeks, and they only had enough oil for 1 day. Now, this oil was prepared in a very special way, and it took 8 days to consecrate it and make it fit for use in the tabernacle. It was used to light the menorah, and the 7 lamps of the menorah had to burn all day and all night. So, as the story goes, the priests had a choice. They could wait until there was enough consecrated oil, which would delay the dedication of the temple by 7 days, since they had, well, actually it took 8 days, so it would still take 8 days. Or they could go ahead and begin temple worship with 1 day's worth of oil. Well, they chose to do the latter. And according to the story, the lamps burned miraculously for 8 entire days. This sounds just like our God doing something like this. Well, though the lamps burning for 8 days on 1 day's worth of oil it's kind of like a legend, and no one can prove for sure it happened, although I believe it happened, Hanukkah is still very important for us. This minor feast is not just a celebration from foreign oppression, but it's a celebration of the freedom to worship the God of Israel in the way that he has prescribed. It's about not assimilating, not caving in, even under pressure of death. This is why Hanukkah is so meaningful. And ultimately, the celebration of Hanukkah is not a focus on the miracle of the oil lasting for 8 days and nights. It's the fact that the Jewish people won a great victory against all odds and against such a powerful ruler and army. Again, that sounds exactly like the way our God is, the God of Israel. Well, there is another reason for all the believers in Yeshua who believe in him as the Messiah to celebrate Hanukkah. The rebellion of the Maccabees prevented the Jewish people, Judaism, circumcision, the feast days, the Sabbath, and the Torah from extinction. If Antiochus had been successful and all the Jews had assimilated, they would have eventually intermarried. The purity of the Davidic line would have disappeared. There would have been no Torah-observant Davidic family to which the Jewish Messiah could have been born. There would be no Yeshua, Jesus. How dark the world would be today without the light of Hanukkah. It's all about the survival of the Jewish people as a distinct and separate people, and about the Messiah, Yeshua, who would come from them. And now, I'd like to share the conclusion and my final thoughts. Hanukkah is so important. It's mentioned in just a few words in Hebrews 11, the faith chapter. Verses 33 and 38 tell us all about what happened to God's people throughout the history of the Bible. And starting in verse 38, we read about what happened during the Maccabean revolt. It says, "They wandered in deserts and mountains and in caves and holes in the ground." Historically, these verses in Hebrews chapter 11 go right down the line. And this verse, verse 38, is referring to the Jews during the first Hanukkah. In fact, my husband and I, Daniel, have been to the holes in the ground that are believed to be the caves of the Maccabees near the town of Modi'in. You see, sometimes we think we understand something, but really, it's something different than what we think. Many of us have been taught that Hanukkah isn't in the Bible, and that it's one of those extra biblical things that the Jewish people do because of tradition. Well, not only is Hanukkah a real historical event that actually took place in the time period between the Tanakh, the Old Testament, and the Apostolic writings, the New Testament, which, by the way, you can read in the books of the Apocrypha, first, second, third, and fourth book of the Maccabees. But Hanukkah is also hidden all through the Tanakh because, like many biblical truths, we just can't see it in the English. As we discussed earlier, it is veiled in a sense. But when we look at the Hebrew, we can see that Hanukkah, which means cleansing and dedication, has been there all along. It is a picture that God gave us, and it teaches us several valuable truths that apply to us today that I started with in the first part. First, because Yeshua kept Hanukkah and taught us how to live a holy life as the Torah teaches, Hanukkah is a historical and current day lesson, a living lesson that teaches us to keep holy, to live according to God's teachings and instructions, and to keep our earthly temples, our bodies and minds, cleaned and sanctified, set apart for Him. Out of our love for Him, we want to stay far, far away from anything that defiles our living temple, our body, which is the house of God. Second, Hanukkah teaches us that we will be persecuted for righteousness' sake, but we shouldn't assimilate and become like the world, even at the threat of our annihilation. Third, Hanukkah teaches us not to hide our light under a bushel. We want to share with others about God's teachings and his instructions and how they themselves, how other people can become a living temple of the Lord, a temple of the Lord God of Israel through the Messiah, Yeshua. We want to demonstrate to people how they can have their own body or sanctuary cleansed through belief in the one who cleanses us from sin, Yeshua. And finally, Hanukkah teaches us that Hanukkah will happen again. The glory of the Lord, Yeshua the Messiah, will literally return one day, as Zechariah says, to the Mount of Olives. He will defeat his Israel-hating enemies gathered under Gog, the anti-Messiah or Antichrist, who will commit the final abomination of desolation by declaring himself to be the only true God. He and all the kings of the earth and all their followers will be destroyed on the mountains of Israel and given as food to the birds and wild beasts, which Revelation 19:17 calls the Great Supper of God. Once again, the God of Israel, through his Messiah, will reside in his temple on the earth in Jerusalem. We who have believed, from there he will reign over every nation, tribe, people, and tongue. And we who have believed will see him in all his glory, face to face, and we will be instantly changed to be like him, from mortal to immortal, to the brightness of his glory. We will never, ever again be tainted or defiled by sin. And we will behold him, as I said, face to face, in all his majesty, beauty, power, and splendor. The eternal light of the world will at long last dwell once again with men. This, my friends, is the joy of Hanukkah. Let's share it, shall we? Let's let our light shine this Hanukkah season. And if you are being blessed by our teachings, please consider giving us a donation and supporting us. Go to www.blessisraelnetwork.com and you can either put in the /donate, or you can go to the website, click on the donate page, and you can give a tax-deductible donation to our 501 through our 501c3. Well, that's it for today. Shalom from Israel and Chag Hanukkah Sameach. Le'itraot.